South Korea built a city for 300,000 people without a single traffic light on its main boulevards. No honking, no gridlock. And it did it by hiding the roads entirely underground. Here is how. From 2,000 feet above the Yellow Sea, the aerial view of this district refuses to make sense. A wide 6-lane boulevard cuts through a district of glass towers at 9 on a Tuesday morning. And it is completely empty. No sedans, no delivery vans, no taxis idling silently at the curb. The only motion is a silent shuttle gliding along a dedicated lane through the calm morning air, and a steady stream of pedestrians crossing the wide intersections without ever looking up for oncoming traffic. This is Songdo International Business District, engineered from scratch on reclaimed tidal flats south of bustling Seoul. And here lies the paradox at the very center of this ambitious modern engineering story we're telling. A megacity of 300,000 souls that somehow produces almost no traffic noise at all today. So how exactly does a city this dense actually breathe without cars clogging its streets every hour? The real reason is simple. The answer hides completely beneath the pavement of every visible boulevard here. To grasp what is happening here, start with scale. 1,500 acres that did not exist 30 years ago. Every square meter was dredged from the seabed, compacted, drained, and stitched to the mainland by the Incheon Bridge. Total investment approaches $40 billion, making Songdo one of the largest private urban projects ever attempted anywhere. The core rule guiding every block, every tower, every plaza reduces to a single number: 15 minutes. From any front door, a resident must reach a school, clinic, grocery, park, and workplace on foot. Not by car, not by app. On foot. The foundation of what urbanists now call the 15-minute city. Paris is chasing it, Melbourne is drafting it, but Songdo could enforce the geometry from day one. The stakes are not local. If this model works at scale, it becomes the template for coastal megacities everywhere. From Jakarta to Lagos to the Persian Gulf, Korea is exporting a blueprint for post-automotive coastal urbanism. But this entire vision, this whole geometric ambition, started with what seemed like an impossible engineering constraint. Here is the problem the planners inherited. Since 2000, private car ownership in South Korea has nearly doubled. Seoul alone now hosts more than 3 million vehicles inside a mountain-ringed basin, gridlock costing $10 billion yearly. Winter air above the capital turns measurably toxic, and yet the political constituency for the car remained overwhelming. Cars meant status. Cars meant a middle class that climbed from post-war poverty into global prosperity in one generation. So when Songdo's master plan proposed banning surface parking from the central business core, the backlash was immediate. Merchants predicted empty storefronts. Elderly residents feared marooning. Columnists called it a European fantasy grafted onto Korean soil. But here is what the critics missed. The engineers were not asking anyone to give up mobility itself. They were asking them to give up the personal vehicle. And then they revealed exactly what lay underground. To see why this design could work, follow the physics, not just the history of urban planning. Separating pedestrians from cars is an old idea. Radburn, New Jersey tried the concept back in 1929. Curitiba, Brazil scaled it with dedicated bus corridors 4 decades later. Korea took the most detailed notes. Chaebol conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai and POSCO treated new districts as urban laboratories, greenfield rehearsals for what came next. But the deciding factor was not history, it was math. Above 30,000 residents per square kilometer, grids fail. Intersections saturate, ambulances stall. Waste heat from idling engines raises ambient temperature by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. This deepens summer humidity into something biologically dangerous, especially with an aging population and brutal August afternoons ahead. This was not abstract concern, it was a countdown. And the obvious fix everyone proposed was about to fail. Ask most people how a city fixes its car problem and the answer comes back instantly. Electrify. Replace every combustion engine with a battery, they say, and emissions vanish. But here is the deeper thing. Emissions were never the deepest problem. A parked electric vehicle occupies 12 square meters, exactly like a gasoline one. A moving electric vehicle needs the same lane width, the same intersection clearance, the same signalized pedestrian crossing. Batteries do not solve geometry, and geometry is the real constraint on any truly dense modern city. When Songdo's planners studied their numbers, they concluded that even total electrification would still leave the streets paralyzed. The streets would remain paralyzed by the sheer physical footprint of vehicles, no matter what powered them. The real reason cars fail in dense cities is not the tailpipe, it is the shape of the machine. So the design pivoted. Instead of cleaning up horizontal roads, engineers in Songdo began to think vertically instead. Elevated pedestrian decks connect office towers at the 3rd and 4th floors, high above the traffic below, so that a knowledge worker can move between buildings without ever descending to the busy street level. Freight and waste were pushed underground. Pneumatic tubes, developed originally in Swedish hospitals, now handle household garbage. They vacuum household trash from every apartment chute directly to a central sorting facility far beneath the city. The garbage travels through those pipes at speeds approaching 70 km per hour, invisible to residents above. There are no garbage trucks in Songdo. There are no morning collection routes clogging the boulevards at dawn. The trash simply disappears through a pipe. And that was only the first layer of the system. Beneath the sidewalks and pneumatic tubes lies a second circulatory system. Freight tunnels running quietly through Songdo. In the logistics corridor, autonomous electric sleds move pallets from a consolidated warehouse at the district edge. They deliver to loading bays inside each tower. The trucks that once clogged morning streets have been engineered out. Above ground, autonomous shuttles operate on dedicated loops, following geofenced routes at a steady 25 km per hour. They carry no steering wheels. Routes are closed systems, mapped centimeter by centimeter, updated live by a fleet platform. Overseeing all of this, an artificial intelligence traffic mesh with sensors embedded in every intersection and pedestrian crossing. They feed a central model that predicts demand not by the day, but hour by hour across the district. If rainfall is forecast at 4 in the afternoon, additional shuttles are pre-positioned near school gates by 3:50. If a concert is scheduled at the arena, curbside pickup zones expand automatically 2 hours before curtain. On rooftops, a pilot corridor for cargo drones threads between towers along precisely defined altitude bands for last-mile delivery. Down south in Busan, an even more ambitious version is taking shape at the Eco Delta Smart Village. It combines these layers with a full-scale 5G digital twin, a real-time virtual model mirroring the physical district. Every traffic light, every water pipe, every elevator car, engineers rehearse emergencies inside the twin before they occur. When a sensor detects an anomaly, the twin proposes a response within milliseconds. And yet, one number dwarfs everything. The number is 30. Songdo produces roughly 30% less carbon dioxide per resident than a comparable Korean city. That is not a projection. It is measured. And 30 is only the headline number in a much larger case. The average commute inside the district has fallen from 58 minutes, the Seoul baseline, to 22 minutes. 76% of all trips inside Songdo are now non-motorized, walking, cycling, or riding a shared micromobility device. The land that would have been asphalt in a traditional city has been reclaimed for parks and public green space. Central Park, the district's green spine, stretches 100 acres along a saltwater canal cooled by seawater circulation. Property values along that park keep climbing, and productivity gains from shorter commutes reach billions of won each year. Workers arrive at their desks less exhausted. Children walk to school unescorted, a reversal unthinkable a generation ago. And crucially, the elderly, expected to suffer most from the car ban, have become the design's most enthusiastic beneficiaries. Fixed-route shuttles run every 4 minutes. Elevators reach every platform. The barrier to leaving the apartment has collapsed. But here's the problem. Scaling the Songdo model faces a hidden wall, one that only becomes visible now. So what is the answer to the question that opened this film? How does a city breathe without cars? The answer is not that cars were removed. The answer is that distance itself was quietly redesigned. Density brought destinations closer. Tunnels moved freight out of sight. Robotics replaced drivers with algorithms that never tire. And data stitched all of it into one living organism that adjusts to human demand minute by minute. Any single one of these systems deployed alone would have failed. Density without logistics tunnels creates gridlocked deliveries. Tunnels without autonomous vehicles are just expensive corridors. Autonomy without an AI mesh becomes a fleet of confused robots. Only the combination works. And this is the insight that Korea is now quietly exporting to the world. Delegations from Saudi Arabia's NEOM project have visited Songdo repeatedly. Indonesia's new capital Nusantara has licensed core elements. Vietnamese and Egyptian planners have followed. The Korean model is becoming the reference architecture for coastal megacities. There is also a cultural shift buried inside the engineering, one the master plan did not fully predict. Younger residents of Songdo are, statistically, far less likely to own a private vehicle than their parents were. They pay for mobility as a service, summoning what they need through an application and releasing it after. Ownership is being quietly replaced by excess. The car did not die in Songdo, it was out-designed. The next chapter of the coastal megacity is already under construction, and Korea is writing its blueprint first. 10 kilometers of Busan's coastline, engineers assembled the first modules of a floating urban district designed to accommodate rising seas. Construction accelerates through 2028, and the first residents are projected to arrive shortly after the platforms open. Buoyant platforms connect via flexible bridges that absorb wave motion without transmitting any of it to the buildings above. Elsewhere, a feasibility study examines a hyperloop link between Busan and Seoul, 400 kilometers of near vacuum tube. It could compress a 2.5-hour high-speed rail journey down to under 30 minutes between the two Korean cities. Robotaxi fleets are moving from pilot phase towards citywide deployment, further eroding the private car ownership model everywhere. But here's the thing. One open question remains that no single engineer working alone can ever fully answer. The digital twin, the AI traffic mesh, the sensor network, all require unprecedented volumes of detailed citizen data. Data revealing how people move, when they leave home, whom they meet, and how long they linger inside spaces. Whether Korean society continues to accept this instrumentation and whether other cultures accept it is the deciding variable. A city that runs without cars runs instead entirely on data flowing continuously between its citizens and systems. If citizens revoke consent, the organism stops breathing. If they extend it, the blueprint spreads to other coastal cities. One single decision will define whether this model spreads across every low-lying coastal metropolis of the 21st century. If these engineering solutions surprised you, this channel has other films on how humanity outmaneuvers its oldest constraints. From bridges that bend with earthquakes to dams that generate power without pouring a single block of concrete. If the idea of a city floating on the sea intrigues you, the next film is already waiting. Subscribe to continue the exploration. There is much more of this world left to understand.